I sat across from Derek in the sterile conference room, watching him slide the termination letter across the table with a smirk he'll never forget. "Your MBA is stealing company time," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You're done." My hands shook as reality hit me. 3 years of loyalty, 80-hour weeks building their fintech platform from scratch, all meant nothing. The company I helped create was discarding me like garbage, but Derek didn't know what I knew. And he definitely didn't know what I was about to do in my exit interview. My name is Leah Turner, and I'm 29 years old. Or I was 29 when this all happened. I'd been working as director of operations at PayBridge, a fintech startup in Austin, Texas, for 3 years. 3 long years of my life poured into that company. My mom in Phoenix kept asking when I'd find time to date, and I'd laugh and say maybe after we close Series B funding. That was always the carrot dangling in front of us. After Series B, after we prove ourselves, after we make it. 6 months before I got fired, I made a decision. I enrolled in an executive MBA program at University of Texas McCombs School of Business. Evening classes on Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. I was careful about it. I went to Derek's office and told him my plans. I wanted to be a better leader, I said. I wanted to understand finance and strategy at a deeper level. I thought it would make me more valuable to PayBridge. Derek seemed supportive at first. He said education mattered. He said it would be great for my development. I remember him leaning back in his chair, nodding thoughtfully, telling me that continuous learning was important for startup leadership. I left that meeting feeling good about my decision, so I rearranged my entire schedule. I started coming in at 6 in the morning on my class days to make sure all my work was done before I left for campus. I was actually working more hours than before, not fewer. My team knew they could reach me anytime. I never missed a deadline. My projects stayed on track. But something shifted about 2 months into the MBA program. Derek started making comments. Little passive-aggressive remarks about my school nights. In team meetings, he'd joke about me studying instead of working, and everyone would laugh uncomfortably. I tried to laugh along, tried to show it wasn't affecting me. Then I noticed I was being excluded from important emails. Threads I should have been on just stopped including me. My direct reports suddenly started reporting to Derek instead of coming to me first. When I asked about it, Derek said he was just trying to reduce my workload since I was so busy with school. The biggest blow came when I saw the Series B pitch deck. We were in active talks with Redwood Ventures, a major Silicon Valley VC firm worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This was the big leagues. The pitch deck was supposed to showcase our entire leadership team and our operational excellence. It built all the operational metrics they were using. It created the customer success playbook that got us to a 94% satisfaction rate. It streamlined our compliance processes and saved us $200,000 in potential fines. But when I saw the deck, my name wasn't on it. My work was there, my frameworks, my numbers, but presented as Derek's vision. I wasn't listed in the leadership section at all. When I asked Derek about it, he said the VCs wanted to see a streamlined leadership structure. "Don't worry," he said. "You'll get your recognition once the deal closes." I felt hurt, confused, but I kept working hard. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was just how things worked at this level. I figured if I just kept my head down and proved my value, everything would work out. I was so wrong. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Derek called me into the conference room. Janet from HR was already there, sitting in the corner with a folder in front of her. She wouldn't make eye contact with me. That's when I knew something was really wrong. Derek's entire demeanor was cold. The friendly mentor act was gone. He looked almost gleeful as he pushed the termination letter across the table. My eyes scanned the words. Misalignment with company priorities, divided focus, unable to maintain the commitment level required for our growth stage. I tried to defend myself. My voice was shaking, but I managed to say that my performance reviews had all been excellent. I mentioned that I'd been working more hours, not fewer, since starting the MBA program. Derek cut me off. His voice was sharp. "The decision is final, Leah. Your MBA program is stealing company time. It shows you're not fully committed to PayBridge's mission. We need people who are all in, not people who are already looking for their next move." I felt like I'd been slapped. My next move? I was trying to be better for this company. I was investing in myself so I could lead more effectively. You have 2 hours to clear your desk, Derek said. Your exit interview with Janet is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. Well, process your final paycheck according to your contract. I walked out of that conference room in a complete daze. My hands were shaking. 3 years of my life. 3 years of 80-hour weeks, of sacrificed friendships, of missed family events. 3 years of building systems they still used every single day. I'd personally trained 23 employees. Half the current staff learned their jobs from me, and Derek was throwing me away for trying to improve myself. I was walking past Derek's office, heading to my desk to start packing, when I heard his voice. His door was slightly open, and he was on the phone. He was laughing. Yeah, I had to cut her loose before the VC meeting, he said. Redwood specifically asked about our leadership commitment levels. Can't have someone on the exec team who's already looking for their next move. The MBA was a red flag. Better to show we're ruthless about focus. They like that kind of thing. I froze in the hallway. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. He didn't fire me for performance. He fired me for optics. For the VC pitch. I was sacrificed to make the company look more attractive to investors. My actual contributions didn't matter. My work ethic didn't matter. All that mattered was how it looked to Redwood Ventures. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I walked to my desk and started packing my things into a cardboard box, my mind racing. I barely slept that night. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in East Austin, and I spent the entire evening pacing around my living room, replaying everything that had happened. Every interaction with Derek over the past few months suddenly looked different. Every excluded email, every dismissive comment, every time I'd been pushed to the sidelines. Around midnight, I opened my laptop. I still had access to the company, Slack, and email. They hadn't cut me off yet. Probably wouldn't until the end of the business day tomorrow. I started reading through old message threads, looking for something, though I wasn't sure what. Then I found it. There was a Slack thread from 3 weeks ago between Derek and Marcus, our CFO. They were discussing the Series B pitch preparation, talking about what Redwood wanted to see. Marcus had written, Redwood wants to see lean, hungry leadership, no distractions. They specifically mentioned concerns about anyone doing side projects or education programs during this growth phase. They want complete focus. Derek's response made my blood run cold. I'll handle it. Leah's out. 3 weeks ago, the decision to fire me had been made 3 weeks before that conference room meeting. Everything since then had been theater. Derek had just been waiting for the right moment, probably clearing it with the lawyers, making sure the termination would be clean. I kept digging. My hands were shaking as I clicked through folders and searched for my name in various threads. What I found made me feel physically sick. I found my own performance reviews in the shared HR drive. Every single one was marked exceeds expectations or outstanding. There were specific comments praising my operational leadership, my ability to scale processes, my talent for developing people. One review from just 4 months ago said, Leah is the backbone of this organization. Her systems thinking and execution excellence are rare at this stage. Then I found my salary information. I was being paid 20% less than the male director of engineering who'd been hired 6 months after me. He had less experience and managed a smaller team, but he was making $53,000 more than me annually. The investor deck was in a shared folder. I opened it and started reading. All of my operational frameworks were presented as Derek's strategic vision. The customer success playbook ED created was called Derek's Customer First Philosophy. The compliance systems I'd built were his Regulatory Excellence Initiative. Had literally taken credit for every major operational achievement of the past 3 years. But the worst discovery came in another message thread between Derek and Marcus. This one was from 2 months ago, right after I'd started my MBA program. Marcus had written, Once we close Series B, we're bringing in a real COO. Someone with pedigree. Leah's great for the early stage scrappy stuff, but Redwood wants Stanford GSB types in leadership. We need to clear the deck. Derek's response. Agreed. The MBA actually works in our favor. Good excuse to make the move now rather than after funding closes. Cleaner this way. I read that message 5 times. They were always planning to replace me. The MBA wasn't the real reason I was fired. It was just a convenient excuse. They wanted me gone so they could bring in someone with a more impressive background, someone from Stanford instead of someone who'd actually built the company from the ground up. My actual competence meant nothing. All that mattered was the name of the business school on someone's resume. I spent another hour documenting everything I was finding. I took screenshots of the Slack messages, the performance reviews, the salary disparities, the investor deck. I created a folder on my personal laptop and organized it all carefully. Then I found something that changed everything. It was an email thread from 8 months ago between Derek and Tyler, our head of engineering. They were discussing quarterly financial reports, getting ready for a board meeting. Tyler had written, "Are you sure we should be booking that revenue this quarter? The contracts aren't finalized. We're still in negotiations with 3 of those 5 clients. If we count them as closed deals, we're inflating our numbers by almost 30%. Derek's response was brief but damning. "The VCs need to see growth." "Well, sort it out later. Just make the numbers work. Trust me on this." I stared at my screen. This was revenue recognition fraud. They were booking revenue from contracts that hadn't actually closed, making the company's financial health look much better than it really was. This wasn't just unethical. This was illegal. And it was in writing. If Redwood Ventures invested in PayBridge based on these fraudulent numbers, they were being actively deceived. This was securities fraud. I sat back in my chair, my heart racing. I had evidence of systematic discrimination, wrongful termination, and financial fraud. I had everything in writing, and I had an exit interview scheduled for 9 in the morning. I thought about my business ethics professor at McCombs, Dr. Patricia Huang. She was in her mid-50s, a former corporate attorney who'd moved into academia. She was known for her work on startup governance failures, and she sat on the advisory board of Redwood Ventures. Dr. Huang had always encouraged us to bring real-world ethical dilemmas to class. It'd been writing case studies about PayBridge for her class. With the names changed, of course. Shed already expressed concerns about some of the practices Eid described. Shed said things like, "If this is happening at a real company, someone needs to speak up before people get hurt." I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the morning. It'd been up all night, but I wasn't tired. I was angry. I was hurt. But more than anything, I was determined. Derek thought he could throw me away and face no consequences. He thought my 3 years of work meant nothing. He thought he could commit fraud and discrimination and get rewarded with millions of dollars in funding. He was about to learn he was wrong. I showed up for my exit interview at exactly 9 in the morning. Id barely slept, maybe 2 hours total, but Id showered and dressed professionally. I wore my navy suit, the one Id bought for important client meetings. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Janet was already in the HR office when I arrived. She still wouldn't look at me directly. She had a form in front of her, a standard exit interview template. Her hands were fidgeting with her pen. "Please, sit down," she said quietly. I sat. I put my bag down carefully. Inside that bag was a folder with printed copies of everything Id found the night before. Every screenshot, every piece of evidence, all organized and ready. Janet went through the standard questions. Her voice was mechanical, like she was reading from a script. "What led to your decision to leave PayBridge? Any feedback about management? What could we have done differently?" I almost laughed at that first question. My decision to leave. As if Id had a choice. But I stayed calm. I answered the early questions diplomatically, professionally. I could see Janet relaxing slightly, probably thinking this would be quick and painless. Then I asked my own question. "Is this exit interview confidential?" Janet looked up, surprised. "It goes into your HR file and is reviewed by leadership," she said. "Why? What if I have concerns about company practices?" I asked. "Serious concerns?" Janet's expression shifted. She looked uncomfortable again. "This is your opportunity to share anything relevant," she said carefully. I took a breath. "Okay. Let me be very clear about what happened here." I started laying out the facts. My 3 years of service. My specific contributions to the company. I rattled off metrics. Customer satisfaction at 94%. Employee retention in my department at 91%. Cost savings of $200,000 through compliance improvements. Successful training and development of 23 employees. Then I pulled out my printed performance reviews. Every single one, I said, sliding them across the desk to Janet, is marked exceeds expectations or outstanding. Not one negative review in 3 years. Janet looked down at the papers, her face pale. I was terminated yesterday, I continued, explicitly for pursuing my MBA. Derek stated that my education was stealing company time and showed I wasn't committed to the company. However, I need to state clearly for the record, I was terminated in retaliation for pursuing education, despite maintaining excellent performance and actually working additional hours to accommodate my class schedule. I pulled out more papers. These are Slack messages, I said, showing that Derek planned my termination 3 weeks before it happened. The MBA program was used as a pretext. The real reason is stated here. They wanted to replace me with someone with better credentials before closing Series B funding. Janet's hands were shaking as she looked at the messages. I'm providing this documentation for the record, I said, because it may be legally relevant. I believe this constitutes wrongful termination and possibly discrimination. Janet looked like she was having trouble breathing. Leah, I need to review all of this carefully. There's more, I said. I need to report serious concerns about financial practices. I pulled out the email exchange between Derek and Tyler. I explained what I was reading. Revenue recognition fraud. Contracts counted as closed when they were still in negotiation. Financial numbers inflated by approximately 30% to impress investors. I believe this constitutes material misrepresentation to potential investors, I said. Redwood Ventures is about to invest millions of dollars based on fraudulent financial data. Janet looked like she might actually be sick. She was gripping the edge of her desk. I kept going. I loved this company, I said, and I meant it. My voice cracked slightly. I gave everything to build it. I sacrificed relationships, my health, my time. But I cannot stay silent about practices that could harm investors, employees, and customers. I paused, then continued. I'm pursuing my MBA in business ethics at McCombs. One of my professors, Dr. Patricia Huang, teaches corporate governance. I've been writing case studies about ethical dilemmas in startups. She sits on the advisory board of Redwood Ventures. I wasn't making threats. I was just stating facts. But Janet understood exactly what I was saying. I think she would find this situation very educational, I said quietly. Janet was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up and closed the door to her office. She came back and sat down, leaning forward. Leah, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something off the record. I waited. You're the third woman Derek has pushed out in 18 months, she said. Same pattern every time. Highly competent women who helped build the company, then suddenly they're not the right fit. He replaces them with men who have fancy MBA credentials from big-name schools but no real experience here. I've documented it all. I've tried to bring it to Marcus and the board, but nobody listens to me. I'm just HR. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a USB drive. She slid it across the desk to me. This is everything I've collected, she said. Salary disparities, termination patterns, performance reviews versus termination rationales. All of it. I was going to quit and take it to a lawyer. But I have 2 kids. I can't afford to lose this job without something else lined up. But you might be able to do something with it. I picked up the USB drive, my hand shaking. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're going to fight back, Janet said. I can see it in your eyes. And maybe if you fight, the rest of us won't have to keep being silent. I looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, I said. She nodded. I'll write up this exit interview exactly as you stated it. It'll be in the official record. And Leah? I'm sorry. I should have done more. I left that office with Janet's USB drive in my bag and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every woman Derek had pushed out. This was about the investors who were about to be defrauded. This was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. I drove straight to campus. I had my business ethics class that afternoon, and I needed to talk to Dr. Huang. I could barely focus during the lecture that afternoon. Dr. Huang was discussing case studies about corporate whistleblowing, the risks and responsibilities, and I kept thinking about the USB drive in my bag, about everything I'd learned in the past 24 hours. After class, I approached her desk. Dr. Huang looked up and smiled. Then her expression changed when she saw my face. Leah, are you okay? Could we speak privately? I asked. Of course. My office. Come on. We walked across campus to her office in the business school. She closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair. I sat down, and suddenly everything I'd been holding in came pouring out. I told her the whole story, my termination, the reasons Derek gave, what I'd discovered in the Slack messages and emails, the discrimination pattern, the financial fraud, the exit interview, Janet's USB drive, all of it. Dr. Huang listened, without interrupting. She took notes on a legal pad, her expression growing increasingly serious. When I finished, I felt emptied out. Dr. Huang was quiet for a moment, looking at her notes. Leah, she finally said, what they did to you is likely illegal on multiple fronts. Wrongful termination, possibly gender discrimination based on the pattern Janet described. But the revenue recognition issue is far more serious. If they're misrepresenting financials to investors, that's securities fraud. She looked at me directly. I need your permission to share this with Redwood's due diligence team. I sit on their advisory board, and I have a fiduciary duty to report material concerns before they make an investment. I felt my heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. I could still walk away, find another job, move on, pretend none of this happened. But I thought about Janet's USB drive, about the other women Derek had pushed out, about future investors who might lose money on fraudulent numbers, about employees whose jobs depended on this company being run ethically. Do it, I said. Share everything. I'm giving you full permission. Dr. Huang nodded. I'm going to forward the information to Redwood's general counsel and their lead due diligence partner. I'll frame it as a governance concern requiring immediate investigation. I'll include your exit interview transcript with your permission. Yes, I said. Include everything. This will likely pause their funding round, she said. They'll need to investigate before proceeding. And Leah, be prepared. Derek will know this came from you. I understand. She reached across her desk and put her hand on mine. What you're doing takes courage. Most people would just walk away. I can't walk away, I said. Too many people have already been hurt. Dr. Huang spent the next hour drafting a detailed memo. I watched her work, her lawyer training evident in how carefully she chose each word. She was building a case, laying out facts, citing specific concerns about governance and fiduciary duty. The subject line of her email read, Material Governance Concerns re. Paybridge Series B Investment. She attached all the documentation I'd provided. The Slack messages showing premeditated termination, the evidence of salary disparities and discrimination patterns, the revenue recognition emails, my exit interview transcript, Janet's compiled evidence from the USB drive. She looked at me one more time before hitting send. Are you sure? I'm sure, I said. She clicked send. We sat there for a moment in silence. It was done. There was no taking it back. Thank you for trusting me with this, Dr. Huang said. Now we wait and see what happens. I drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. It'd just potentially destroyed my former company's funding round. Derek would be furious. The entire startup ecosystem in Austin was small. Word would get around. I might never work in tech again, but I'd told the truth. And somehow that felt more important than anything else. I got home around 7 that evening. I made myself some dinner that I couldn't eat. I tried to watch TV but couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, though I wasn't sure what I was expecting. At 9:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then decided I might as well. Hello, Miss Turner? This is Sarah Chen. I'm a venture partner at Redwood Ventures. My heart stopped. I sat up straighter on my couch. Yes, this is Leah. I'm calling about the information Dr. Huang shared regarding Paybridge. We're taking this very seriously. We need to schedule a call with you and our legal team tomorrow to discuss what you've documented, but I need to tell you something first." I held my breath. "You're not the first person who's reached out to us about Derek Morrison," Sarah said. "We received an anonymous tip 3 days ago about financial irregularities at Paybridge. We were already planning a deeper audit. Your information corroborates what we were hearing. This changes everything." I felt dizzy. Someone else had already tried to blow the whistle. I wasn't alone in this. "Can you be available for a call tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Sarah asked. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." "Good. Well, send you a calendar invite. And Miss Turner, thank you. You may have saved us from making a very costly mistake." After she hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, just breathing. Someone else had seen what was wrong at Paybridge and tried to speak up. Now there were 2 of us. Maybe more. For the first time since I'd been fired, I felt something other than anger and hurt. I felt hope. I woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages, all from current Paybridge employees. People I'd worked with, people I'd trained, people I'd thought of as friends. The messages varied. Some were supportive, some were confused, a few were angry. But they all said essentially the same thing. Something big was happening at Paybridge, and everyone knew it had something to do with me. I learned later that Redwood Ventures had sent a formal letter to Paybridge's board at 6 a.m. that morning. The letter suspended all Series B negotiations, pending a full, independent audit of the company's financial practices and governance procedures. Derek had apparently lost his mind. According to the texts I was getting, Head called an emergency leadership meeting and was demanding to know who'd leaked information to the VCs. He was threatening legal action against anyone involved. At 8:30, a courier delivered an envelope to my apartment. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Paybridge's law firm. The letter accused me of theft of proprietary information, defamation, and violation of my NDA. It demanded I retract all statements I'd made to Redwood Ventures and return any company materials in my possession. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking with anger. They were trying to intimidate me into silence. I called the employment attorney my mom had recommended, a woman named Rachel Goldstein. She agreed to see me immediately. Rachel's office was in downtown Austin. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and direct. She read the cease and desist letter, then read all my documentation. It took her about 30 minutes to go through everything. When she looked up, she was smiling slightly. "They just made a massive mistake," she said. "What do you mean? You didn't steal anything. You reported illegal activity. You're a whistleblower. There are federal and state protections for whistleblowers. By sending this letter, they've now created evidence of retaliation against a whistleblower, which strengthens your case exponentially." She started typing on her computer. "I'm going to send them a response that will make their lawyers very nervous. We're going to lay out the facts clearly. Your wrongful termination, the evidence of gender discrimination, the financial fraud you reported. And we're going to include a demand that they preserve all records related to your exit interview and termination, because those are now potential evidence in a lawsuit." She looked at me. "How do you feel about filing a wrongful termination suit? If it comes to that," I said. "But right now, I just want the truth to come out." "The truth is coming out," Rachel said. "Trust me." She sent her response letter within an hour. I got a copy. It was 8 pages long and devastating. Every claim in Paybridge's cease and desist was systematically dismantled. The letter concluded with a threat of its own. Any further retaliation against Miss Turner will result in additional legal action. Over the next few days, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Current Paybridge employees kept reaching out, most of them privately. Many of them were women. A software engineer named Melissa called me. She was crying. "He told me I was too emotional when I asked for the raise I was promised," she said. "Then he hired a guy fresh out of college at a higher salary than mine. I've been there for 2 years. I thought it was just me. I thought I was the problem." "It's not you," I told her. "It's him." More stories came out. A product manager who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, while less experienced men were elevated. A designer who'd been told her maternity leave showed she wasn't serious about her career. A marketing director who'd been pushed out after complaining about inappropriate comments. The pattern was undeniable. Derek had created a toxic culture, and it had been hiding in plain sight. Meanwhile, Redwood Ventures was conducting their investigation. They'd brought in forensic accountants to examine Paybridge's books. What they found was even worse than what Id discovered. Revenue had been inflated by approximately 30%. Multiple contracts listed as closed deals were actually still in negotiation. Some reported customers had never actually signed agreements. The company's actual financial health was far worse than what had been presented to investors. The accountants also found other irregularities: expense reports that didn't match receipts, consulting fees paid to a company that turned out to be owned by Derek's brother, a pattern of financial sloppiness at best, fraud at worst. Janet reached out to me on the 5th day after everything exploded. "I've been subpoenaed," she texted. "They want all my HR records. I'm cooperating fully." We met for coffee. She looked exhausted but also relieved. "You gave me courage," she said. "I've been documenting everything for months, feeling sick about it, not knowing what to do. But you actually did something. You didn't just stay silent." She told me she was now working with Rachel too, considering her own legal action for the hostile work environment Shed endured. A tech journalist from TechCrunch reached out asking for an interview. Someone at Redwood had leaked that a major Series B deal had fallen apart due to governance issues. The journalist was investigating. I agreed to speak on background, not for direct attribution yet. I wanted the story told, but I wanted it told right. Then, on the 7th day after everything started, I received an email that changed everything again. The sender was Philip Chen, managing partner at Redwood Ventures. He was the most powerful person at the firm, the final decision-maker on all major investments. The subject line read simply, "Opportunity." I opened it with shaking hands. "Miss Turner," the email began. "We've completed our preliminary investigation into Paybridge. The findings are deeply troubling. Derek Morrison and Marcus Chen have been asked to step down from their positions, effective immediately. The board is seeking interim leadership to stabilize the company and determine if it can be salvaged. Your name keeps coming up from employees as someone who actually understands how the company operates and has the trust of the team. Would you be interested in discussing an interim COO position? The company you helped build shouldn't die because of their misconduct. Perhaps it deserves a second chance under different leadership. Please let me know if you'd be open to a conversation." I read the email 3 times. They were offering me a position at Paybridge, not just my old job back. A chance to actually run the company. The company that had fired me a week ago was now asking me to come back and save it. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. Part of me wanted revenge. I wanted to watch Paybridge burn to the ground. Derek had hurt me, had hurt so many other people. Why should I help save what Head built? But another part of me kept thinking about the 85 employees who'd done nothing wrong. The customers who relied on our platform for their businesses, all the actual good work that had been done by people other than Derek. I thought about Melissa, crying on the phone about being called too emotional, about Janet, documenting abuse for months with nowhere to turn, about all the people who'd reached out to me, telling me their stories, thanking me for speaking up. Did I want to destroy, or did I want to rebuild? I called Dr. Huang early the next morning. "I need advice," I said. We met at a coffee shop near campus. I showed her Philip Chen's email. "This is your decision alone," she said. "But ask yourself, do you want to destroy or rebuild? Both are valid choices. Neither makes you a bad person." "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants them to fail. They threw me away." "They did," Dr. Huang agreed. "Derek threw you away. But Derek's gone now. The question is whether the company itself is worth saving. The people there, the work you all did together." I called Rachel next. She was more pragmatic. "You have all the negotiating power right now," she said. "If you're even considering this, you do it entirely on your terms. You don't go back as interim anything. You go back as the person in charge, with equity, with authority, with guarantees." "What kind of terms?" I asked. She started listing them. Compensation, equity, board representation, legal protections. Every protection we can build into a contract. I called my mom last. She'd been following everything, worried about me, checking in every day. "Baby," she said, "you've always been a builder, not a destroyer. But don't let them take advantage of you again. If you do this, you do it because you want to, not because you feel obligated." I spent the rest of the day thinking. By evening, I'd made my decision. I emailed Philip Chen back. "I'm open to a conversation, but not about an interim COO position. Let's talk about what it would take for me to consider a CEO role." The call was scheduled for the next morning. It wasn't just Philip. It was the entire Redwood Investment Committee, plus 2 of Paybridge's board members who'd survived the house cleaning. I came prepared. Rachel had helped me draft a list of demands. I had them printed out in front of me. Philip opened the call by explaining the situation. Derek and Marcus were gone, terminated for cause. 2 board members had resigned. Series B was dead, but Redwood was willing to provide bridge financing to stabilize operations. The company desperately needed leadership who understood the business and had credibility with the team. "I appreciate the situation," I said. "Here's what it would take for me to consider joining." I read through my list. Not interim COO, full CEO position. 5% equity that vests immediately, not over 4 years. A compensation package at market rate for a CEO of a company this size. Full authority over hiring and firing decisions. Philip was quiet for a moment. Then, continue. "A complete compensation audit within 60 days, with correction of all pay disparities. Janet promoted to VP of People with real authority and direct board access. An independent board member with HR and culture expertise added to the board. A commitment to transparency, including a full company meeting where I can explain what happened and what we're doing to fix it." "What else?" Philip asked. "My attorney reviews all agreements before I sign anything. Whistleblower protections are guaranteed in writing. Full funding for any employee who wants to pursue continuing education, whether that's an MBA, certifications, or any other professional development." I paused, then added one more thing. "And Derek Morrison does not receive any portion of his unvested equity. He doesn't get to profit from the fraud he committed." There was silence on the call. I could hear people talking quietly in the background, probably muted on their end. Finally, Philip came back. "You drive a hard bargain, Miss Turner. But yes, agreed. All of it. I need it in writing," I said. "Within 48 hours, you'll have it," Philip said. 2 days later, I had a contract. Rachel reviewed every word. It was solid, everything I'd asked for, plus a few additional protections Shed negotiated. I signed it on a Friday afternoon. On Monday morning, I walked back into Paybridge as the CEO. The lobby went silent when I walked in. People stared. Then someone started clapping. I looked over. It was Melissa, the software engineer. Then another person joined in. Then another. Soon the entire office was applauding. I felt tears in my eyes but blinked them back. I had work to do. I called an all-hands meeting for 10 a.m. Everyone gathered in the main space. People were nervous, uncertain, whispering to each other. I stood at the front of the room and told them everything. Why I'd been fired, what I'd discovered, what had happened with the VCs, the investigation, the findings, Derek and Marcus' termination. "I'm not here because I'm special," I said. "I'm here because I refuse to stay silent about things that were wrong. But the truth is, we all built this company together. Derek and Marcus tried to take credit, but it was all of us. Every single person in this room contributed to whatever good Paybridge accomplished." I paused, looking around at all the faces. If we're going to continue, we do it with integrity. No more lies about revenue, no more discrimination, no more toxic culture. We build something we can actually be proud of. The transformation started that day. We completed the compensation audit within 3 weeks. 12 employees got raises, totaling $180,000 in corrections. 3 men, to their credit, voluntarily took small pay cuts to align with market rates and ensure fairness. I established new leadership principles. I had them printed and hung in every conference room. Integrity, transparency, equity, growth. We started having weekly all-hands meetings where anyone could ask anything. I created an anonymous feedback system with real accountability. The culture began to shift. People started speaking up instead of staying silent. Women who'd felt marginalized started taking up space again. The office felt different, lighter somehow. News of the Paybridge scandal broke in TechCrunch. Derek's reputation was destroyed. He was facing potential securities fraud charges. Other companies where he'd been an advisor quietly removed him from their websites. His social media went dark. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, just a quiet sense that justice had been done. 3 weeks into my tenure as CEO, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I opened it hesitantly. It was from Tyler, the head of engineering who'd been in those incriminating emails about revenue fraud. The email was long. He explained how Derek had pressured him to manipulate the numbers, how Head felt trapped, scared of losing his job if he refused, how Head gone along with it even though he knew it was wrong. "When I heard you got fired for your MBA," he wrote, "something broke in me. Here I was, participating in actual fraud, and you got fired for trying to improve yourself. I couldn't live with it anymore. I sent that anonymous tip to Redwood because I couldn't stay silent," he continued. "I'm ready to face consequences for what I did, but I wanted you to know that you inspired me to do the right thing. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry I let Derek pressure me into compromising my integrity." I read the email twice, then I responded. "Come to my office tomorrow morning," I wrote. "We'll figure this out together. Accountability doesn't have to mean destruction. Let's talk about how you can help fix what was broken." Tyler came in the next day. We talked for 2 hours. He was devastated, genuinely remorseful. Had already been cooperating with the investigation, providing detailed testimony about Derek's financial manipulations. We put him on a performance plan focused on rebuilding trust and establishing proper financial controls. He took a temporary pay cut and went through ethics training. But we didn't fire him. People deserve the chance to make things right. Over the following months, Tyler became one of our strongest advocates for ethical decision-making. He spoke openly about his mistakes in team meetings. He became a mentor to junior employees about standing up for what's right even when it's hard. The culture was truly changing. 6 months passed. 6 months of incredibly hard work, of rebuilding not just a company but a culture, of proving that integrity could actually be a competitive advantage. Paybridge stabilized. Our revenue numbers were real now. Lower than Derek's fantasies, yes, but solid and growing authentically. We were profitable on a smaller scale. Several major clients had actually increased their contracts because they trusted the new leadership. Employee retention hit 96%, the highest it had ever been. Our culture surveys showed dramatic improvements. People felt safe speaking up. They felt valued. They felt like their work mattered. Redwood Ventures eventually completed a Series B investment, though at a lower valuation than Derek had been chasing. But the terms were better, the oversight stronger. Philip Chen joined our board personally, which was actually a huge vote of confidence. I finished my MBA. I graduated with honors. My thesis was titled Ethical Leadership in High-Growth Startups, a case study in whistleblowing and recovery. Dr. Huang was my advisor. The case study of Paybridge, with everyone's permission, is now taught in business schools across the country. Students read about what happened at Paybridge and discuss what they would have done. Would they have stayed silent? Would they have spoken up? What does integrity cost, and what is it worth? Justice was served, though not in the dramatic way you might see in movies. Derek faced an SEC investigation. He paid significant fines and was banned from serving as an officer of any public company. His startup career was over. Marcus reached a similar settlement and cooperated with investigators. Neither faced criminal charges. The legal system rarely works that cleanly, but their professional lives were effectively ended. They'd built their reputations on lies, and when the truth came out, there was nothing left. I tracked down the other women Derek had pushed out. I found 3 of them. I reached out, apologized on behalf of Paybridge, and offered them positions if they wanted to return. 2 accepted. 1 had moved on to something better and was happy where she was, but she thanked me for reaching out. We formed an informal support group. Women who'd been pushed out of tech companies, who'd faced discrimination, who'd been told they weren't good enough. We met monthly for dinner. We shared our stories. We supported each other. One of them, a woman named Jenna who'd been a product lead at Paybridge before Derek fired her, started writing a book about gender discrimination in tech. She interviewed all of us. The book comes out next year. Janet thrived as VP of People. She built an HR function that became known industry-wide. Paybridge started appearing on best places to work lists. Janet spoke at conferences about standing up for what's right, about how HR can be a force for real change instead of just protecting the company. She told people, "I spent years being silent because I was scared. I documented everything but didn't act. It took seeing Leah's courage to give me my own. Now I tell everyone, document everything, yes, but don't just document. Act. Speak up. Your silence protects the wrong people." Tyler's redemption was quieter but no less real. He stayed as head of engineering. He led the implementation of proper financial controls and transparent reporting. He became an advocate for ethical decision-making. He told new employees, "I made serious mistakes. I let fear control me instead of acting with integrity. The question isn't whether you'll face ethical challenges. The question is what you'll do when you face them." The broader impact surprised me. Other startups reached out asking how WED transformed our culture. I started mentoring other women in tech who were facing similar situations. I became an informal advisor to other whistleblowers, helping them understand their options and rights. I joined an advisory board focused on startup governance reform. We work with VCs to establish better due diligence practices, to ask harder questions about culture and leadership before investing. Several major VC firms have adopted policies directly because of what happened at Paybridge. Looking back now, I understand what I learned from all of this. I used to think success meant keeping your head down and working hard. That loyalty meant never questioning authority. That if you just did good work, you'd be recognized and rewarded. I was so naive. Real integrity requires courage. It requires being willing to risk something that matters to you. It requires speaking up even when your voice shakes, even when you don't know if anyone will listen. Being fired was the most painful experience of my professional life. For days, I felt like a failure, like I'd done something wrong, like I wasn't good enough. But I learned what I'm actually worth. Not what Derek thought I was worth. Not what a discriminatory system told me I was worth. What I actually bring to the table. My skills, my leadership, my integrity. Those things have value, regardless of whether any individual person recognizes it. I'm not special. I need you to understand that. I'm not some exceptional person who was uniquely qualified to fight back. I was just someone who got angry enough and hurt enough that staying silent felt worse than speaking up. Every single person has power they don't realize. The power to document what's wrong. The power to speak truth. The power to say this is not okay and I won't accept it. The power to act with integrity even when it costs something. If you're being mistreated at work right now, document everything. Save emails, screenshot messages, keep a detailed log with dates and times. You might need that evidence. I needed mine. Find allies. I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. Janet was documenting everything too. Dr. Huang was in a position to help. Tyler was drowning in guilt and looking for a way to make things right. Other employees were feeling the same way I was. When you start speaking up, you often find you're not as alone as you thought. Your education, your growth, your development, these things threaten insecure leaders. They fire people for pursuing MBAs because education gives you options, gives you knowledge, gives you power. That's their problem, not yours. Don't ever dim your light because someone else is threatened by it. Companies are just groups of people. When bad leadership is removed, when toxic culture is addressed, good people can rebuild something better. Paybridge didn't have to die. The company wasn't the problem. The leadership was the problem. Once we removed the problem, we could heal. Speaking up is absolutely terrifying. I won't pretend it's not. I was scared every single day. Scared of retaliation, scared of losing my career, scared of being blacklisted. But I did it anyway. Because staying silent felt worse than being afraid. And here's the truth. You might save more than just yourself. When I spoke up, it created space for Janet to act on what Shed documented. It gave Tyler permission to come forward. It helped other women at Paybridge find their voices. My courage gave other people courage. That MBA they fired me for? It gave me everything I needed to fight back effectively. The knowledge to understand what was legally wrong, the network to know who could help, the credibility to be taken seriously. They were threatened by my education because education is power. They knew that. Now I know it too. I teach a guest lecture now in Dr. Huang's business ethics class. I tell my story to rooms full of MBA students. After class, people always come up to me. Young women, usually, sometimes men too, telling me they're dealing with similar situations, asking what they should do. I give them all the same answer. Document everything, find allies, understand your legal rights, and when you're ready, speak up. Don't do it alone if you can help it, but do it. Last month, a young woman named Carmen approached me after one of those lectures. She was close to tears. I'm dealing with something similar at my company, she said. I was afraid to speak up, but after hearing your story, I think I have to. I gave her my card. Call me, I said. You don't have to do this alone. None of us do. She called 2 days later. We talked for an hour. I connected her with Rachel, my attorney. I walked her through documenting what was happening. I reminded her that speaking up was her choice, but staying silent was also a choice, and both had consequences. Last week, I got an email from Carmen. Shed reported the discrimination she was facing. The company investigated, and her manager was fired. Shed been promoted to lead the team. Thank you, her email said. You showed me it was possible to fight back and win. That's what this is really about. Not revenge, not destruction. Showing people it's possible to fight back. That speaking truth to power isn't always career suicide. That sometimes integrity wins. Here is what I learned from being fired for my MBA and exposing the fraud that killed our VC funding. Integrity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Companies built on lies eventually collapse. Careers built on taking credit for others' work eventually crumble. The truth has a way of coming out. Your worth is not determined by how one toxic person sees you. Derek thought I was disposable. He was wrong. Your value doesn't change based on someone else's opinion. The system is not as powerful as it seems. I thought Derek was untouchable. I thought Redwood would never believe me over him. I thought speaking up would destroy my career, but people can change the system. Individuals have more power than we think. Justice doesn't always happen, but when you fight for it, sometimes you win. Not always. I want to be honest about that. Sometimes whistleblowers lose everything and nothing changes, but sometimes speaking up works. You don't know which it will be until you try. The best revenge is not destruction, it's building something better. I could have walked away and let Paybridge die, but rebuilding it with integrity, creating the culture we should have had all along, that feels better than any revenge could. And sometimes, getting fired is the best thing that ever happened to you. If Derek hadn't fired me, I would have stayed. I would have kept accepting being undervalued, being underpaid, being passed over. Getting fired forced me to see the truth. It forced me to stop accepting less than I deserved. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. I run a company built on integrity. I have equity that's actually worth something. I mentor other women fighting similar battles. I teach future business leaders about ethical decision-making. I sleep well at night knowing I stood up for what was right. That's worth more than any salary Derek could have paid me. So let me ask you something. Have you ever faced a situation at work where you knew something was wrong but were afraid to speak up? Have you ever been undervalued, discriminated against, or pushed aside despite your contributions? What stopped you from acting, and what would it take for you to find your voice? I want to hear your stories. Share them in the comments. Maybe you're going through something similar right now. Maybe you fought back and won. Maybe you stayed silent and regret it. Whatever your experience, you're not alone. Let's talk about it. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think or feel something, do me a favor. Like this video so more people can find it. Subscribe to this channel because I'll be sharing more stories about fighting back and winning. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling with workplace injustice and needs to know it's possible to speak up and survive. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long, but these things can't be told in sound bites. Real change is messy and complicated and scary. But it's possible. I hope my story gives you courage, whatever you're facing. I hope it reminds you that you have more power than you think. I hope it shows you that integrity matters, even when it costs something. Stay strong. Speak up. Fight back. You deserve better than silence. And remember, sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being fired by someone who never deserved you in the first place.